Hi. Well, today I'm getting ready to sketch, and it seems to me that there's something we need to talk about, and that is dealing with that inner critic. I call him IC. I find that IC can be a bit of a problem when you're drawing. And one of the things I wanted to do is talk about today is how to make IC more productive for you and turn him into your BFF, your best friend. Can you imagine that? IC being your best friend? But in actual fact, he can. Now, just getting organized myself. I've got my sketchbook here, and I've got a little picture that I'm going to do, and I'm just going to get Mr. Inner Critic involved and give you an idea how you can teach that nasty little Mr. Critic, Inner Critic, to be a real good friend to you. And believe me, he can. Your inner critic has been with you your entire life. He's seen all the experiences you have, and he's learned a lot. The trouble with that inner critic is he doesn't know how to talk to you. He doesn't have the language skills. I kind of equate him with he's has very poor social skills, and he really has the language skills of a 3-year-old. He can tell you what he likes and what he doesn't like, but he can tell you a lot more if you can train him. And that's what I want to do today, is to show you how to train your inner critic to be a useful companion for you, because after all, he's on your shoulder all the time and he has a lot of knowledge. Why not take advantage of that? So here's what we're going to work on. I'm going to work on this picture of this little tugboat that was sitting in the harbor. This is up at Oakover Arm. And I just thought, I was out kayaking and I saw this boat. Doesn't he look like he has a personality? I just felt he did. So I'm gonna draw him today. And at the same time, I'm going to show you some tricks or techniques to teach your inner critic how to talk to you. So the first thing I'm going to do is line up my page, take a look. I'm going to decide how big. And so some of the things I'm going to look at is in terms of size. This looks like this part here is about a little bit more than 1 1/4 this size here. So the first thing I want to do is kind of draw this here, because this will determine the size of my boat. So I'm going to draw that. And right away, Mr. Inner Critic is going to start in. He's going to say, wait a minute, you haven't got those right. Are those the same size? Isn't that a little bit too sharp? And yes, I'm thinking, now that I've drawn that line, that's probably not quite the right angle I want. It should be a little bit less. Here's the first lesson for Mr. Inner Critic. Do not pick up your eraser and start erasing. The first thing I want to do is I want to say to him, okay, what's wrong with this line? And he's going to say, well, it's a little bit too sharp up this way. Well, he will to me, because he and I have been talking for quite a bit for a while. This is something new for your inner critic, for you to actually say to him, what's wrong? How do I change it? What don't you like? What needs to be done? And so when I look at this line, I can see the angle isn't quite right. Now this part here is good, I like this part, but it shouldn't go up quite so far. So really, I just need to go to here. And now I'll check with him. Does that look better? Not bad. Looking at that, I like that angle. That looks good. Now let's look at the line down this way. This line droops a little bit too much. It shouldn't be quite so slanted. Okay, so then it should just come down like this. So I'm going to tidy that up. So now that the inner critic, Mr. IC, and I have agreed on what we like, now I will erase what I don't like. And then I will continue drawing. And again, I'm going to just carry on. And every once in a while, you know what's going to happen. He's going to rear his ugly head, and he's going to say some nasty little thing to me. But in actual fact, it's not nasty. If I listen carefully to him and then question him on what exactly he's not happy with, I will quickly be able to see what I don't like. Now see here, even as I was talking to you, Mr. IC and I had a little conversation. I did this first line here for this buoy, and I decided no, in relationship to this was too narrow. It needed to be wider. Mr. IC and I, we both agreed. So now I have taken and drawn in my new line, I've made my new change, and now I will take out the old one. So this is something different that you're not used to. You're going to make a few changes in your drawing. One of the thing is, if you notice, I'm drawing very lightly so that I can easily make a change without marring my paper. So your layout lines should be light enough to erase easily, but dark enough that they do not make a mess of your paper when you go to erase. Dark enough so you can see, actually, is the other thing. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to have my eraser so handy. And it's not going to be the first thing I do. The first thing I do is make some changes. And sometimes those changes will be quick to see, and other times you'll have to do several lines before you have the one that you like. And that's okay. Once you have the one you like, then you're going to make that change. And if you notice here even, I see this line here, I started out with my boat and decided that wasn't deep enough. And then I went up and did it higher. So I can get rid of the old lines. I sometimes leave those lines depending on where they're located, just because, you know, I don't like to be stopping and erasing all the time. But at the same time, I am always aware that I want to be making those changes. And you can see here now, because I'm talking to you as well and trying to do this as I talk, that I'm making a few changes again. I wasn't happy with this line here. When I look at my reference, it has to be closer to the edge, so I moved it over. Now I'm looking and seeing that it's more of an angle. So this part here I liked, but this part here wasn't quite right. And I'm looking at this angle here and checking to see those at the same time. So you see now I've ended up with a cluster of lines. Again, I'm just going to erase the ones that I don't like. Now the other thing you want to think about is not just, it's your erasing for sure, but the other thing is sometimes you need to do more than that. Because you're sitting to draw and drawing, and that is something that most of us do, is sit. Let's face it, it's way more comfortable to sit than it is to stand and draw. And so what I'm going to do is do my drawing, and then we need to check it. Now because you're sitting, you're very close to your work. And so this means that you don't actually see it in a good perspective. It's really important, if you're not happy with something, to kind of stand it up like this. And what I try and do is I stand it up, and I might even, and normally I draw more from life. And so from life, I stand it up and look and see and compare. So for here, I can look and compare. I'm not sure that you can see me comparing. Can you see? No, you can't. Over here. Now you can see me comparing. So now you see I can compare my boat and my drawing to see if they have the same kind of angles. And I can see that this is the boat is actually on more of an angle than what I have done. And that's much easier to see when I'm looking at my book like this. So when you're drawing, don't hesitate to do this often, to check and see, so you and Mr. IC can have a better look at what's going on. Another really valuable tool, and I do it all the time, is when I step away from my drawing, or if I'm having trouble with my drawing, I will set it up on a little bit of an easel, and often I just set it there on my stand, and then kind of move back and look at it, and really look at it. Also, I compare it to my drawing, but at the same time, I'm looking at it to see what I've done and see what makes sense. And of course, when I look at this, I can totally see that I need to make this more of an angle, and this one is, look at these, are not exactly the same, but they are very similar. And so this needs to be more angular, and this one here is more upright. So in actual fact, although this looks funny, this line is pretty close to being right, but these two need to be at an angle. It's much easier to see when you're looking at it horizontal. Okay, so I finished inking in my boat, and I may want to take and add some color to it. And I probably will, because I kind of like this blue in here, and I like a little bit of blue and a little bit of red. But for purposes of talking to you about training Mr. Critic, I think we've got a lot of things happening. Is it perfect? No. Of course there's going to be some errors in it somewhere. But is Mr. Critic happy? What I need to say to him now is, what are the things you like in this picture? What do you enjoy seeing happening? And that's the first thing you want to look at when you stop to assess your picture. What do you like? What is happening that you enjoy? Get Mr. Critic involved, and he'll tell you, oh wow, you know, I kind of like what's happening over here. I like that shading that's going on there. And isn't that neat how that shadow, actually I can even darken that shadow a little bit so that that rope adds that interesting little bit of shape and interest to the side of the boat. I kind of like how that goes. It makes the rope stand out a bit more. Some of the other things I like is I think I did get the proportions right, and I like what's going on there. Now there may be some things that Mr. Critic doesn't like, but I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about how I feel, and I kind of enjoy this picture. I kind of like what's happening here. As you can see, I'm fiddling because I'm kind of checking my values as I talk to you, and I see some things I want to really highlight. And so this will happen to you as well. As you're doing this, you'll see. And this is part of looking at the picture at the end, enjoying the things that are happening that are really nice, and letting some things go too. Yeah. That's another lesson you need to teach Mr. Critic, because sometimes he has trouble dealing with perfection and he wants it perfect. And you need to say to him, Mr. Critic, it actually looks quite nice, and you need to enjoy it. You need to take the photograph away and look at it, Mr. Critic. Is that not a neat, interesting picture of a boat? So I invite you to give this a try. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope that you are able to tame Mr. Critic, because he does have a lot of information and he can be very helpful with you.